Our next speaker is Stephanie Briere. Stephanie might be familiar to some of you listening today in our virtual conference. She's the manager of Postal and Courier programs. Welcome, Stephanie.
I was still muted. Sorry about that. Thank you, Dennis. It's a pleasure to be with you this afternoon. So I will have a quick update on the Courier Low Value Shipment program. Because in the sake of time, but I know you have a lot of questions and there is a lot of interest around that program that already exists in the agency. So I just wanted to touch base on the fact that even if you feel that there is no movement being done on the changes required to the program, it is totally not the case. We are internally very active on that file, and there is a lot of work being done right now on trying to assess the current situation of the program and its operations. So as you probably all know, it's under a moratorium for new applicants. The reason why is because we wanted to focus on the modernization of that program. For those that are with CBSA or in the custom business for a very, very long time, if you recall well, when ACI started, CLVS was the phase 4, the last one that was supposed to be introduced. So now that e-manifest is done, now that all the other modes are actually being considered as advanced information, it's time for CLVS to go through that modernization effort as well. So that's the reason why the moratorium was put in place. Since we've done that, we made that decision, we have worked a lot on the e-commerce custom strategy, which actually CLVS redesign forms part of. I will let Mike Junek provide you more updates and details around that strategy a little bit later on. I think it's the next topic, actually. But part of that strategy, I just wanted to highlight the fact that we are already running a pilot that Christelle mentioned earlier on the Courier Analytics portal. You will probably hear a lot about the CAP tool. It's how we name it internally and probably externally now. It's our first step towards modernization. You've talked a lot about changes yesterday on COM. We are bringing new changes as well today. So we didn't want to rush the changes on CLVS because there is a lot and a variety of things that needs to change. And we want to explore how it works today. So the business models, the trends and patterns, introducing automation. So for the first time, having our BSOs accessing a tool and a system that is CBSA based, it's an innovation in its own. And this is what we need to do. We need to explore, we need to understand the reality of the business models today to be able to provide you with the best program that will fit your needs and the agency needs as well. Same way as Melissa just explained, we don't want to rush things, and I think a phased approach is the best to actually change that program slowly to go to an end state vision of a low value stream that we don't know how it's going to look like today, unfortunately, because we didn't explore everything, but it's the intent behind that exercise that we are conducting today. So that redesign is actually also considering through the e-commerce strategy, regs and next changes, potentially framework revision, program requirement revision, mode revision, operational revision. So it's very open to all the discussions that we can have with industry and also our BSOs and our operations in the field to make sure that we can sustain the new program that we will implement in terms of processing capability. So the best example we're using internally is, we don't know with the volumes that we are looking at from an e-commerce / low value stream, how much time do we need to process that information? We do not know today. So this is the purpose of the CAP tool helping us, and Melissa will provide you a little bit more details around it in a few minutes. But that's the type of question we are asking ourselves. What type of security can we put in place to augment or change or actually modify the PIP certification that is required to be a CLVS participant? Is there is other options out there that we can use? So those are all the questions that we're asking ourselves right now. We are still exploring, so you will hear soon from us as soon as we will have made enough progress to be able to have questions to those answers and come back with a proposal to industry. But we're still exploring a lot, so just bear with us a little bit longer. I know you're eager to see the new version of CLVS. I'm calling it CLVS 2.0, and I'd like to see it too. But we're still on the exploration mode, so just just give us a little bit more time around it. So that's the current state of CLVS redesign and its new form coming up. And oh, I see that Melissa just dropped, so I don't know if she wants to. Crystal, you want me to continue on the second slide?
Oh, I'm still here, Stephanie. I can
okay,
pop on. I'm just mindful of time. I know Mike will cover some of this as well. So just on the last slide there, the Courier Analytics portal, I'll just be super brief. So essentially a platform that was developed to help us with our risk assessment process from a courier perspective. Currently, we risk assess through all the proprietary systems, different for every company. But from a platform perspective, a more concise risk assessment approach of centralizing the data, centralizing all of the information is the movement we're making with the CAP tool. CAP is just the interim step. It's just a platform that was created internally in order to augment our risk assessment process. The long-term vision is that we'll take lessons learned from this to develop a fulsome system. And we're happy to provide more information on that as we continue to develop. It is launched in 3 different locations with various stakeholders at this point in time, and feedback has certainly been exceptional from a frontline perspective on its functionality, but also the ease of use from a stakeholder community as well. So I want to make sure we leave enough time for Mike. I know he has the e-commerce presentation, which kind of ties in nicely here, but we're happy to field any initial questions on that.
That's great, thank you. Yes, I think for the sake of time and continuity, maybe we'll just move right into the next presentation on e-commerce, and if we have questions, we'll allow questions on CLVS or e-commerce, anything in that area following Mike's presentation. So for everyone in the crowd, I'm going to say Mike Junek's probably a familiar face. He's now with us as the Director General of Transformation, Planning and Projects, and that makes him responsible for e-commerce. So Mike, I'll pass things over to you. Welcome.
Thanks, Janice. I see that I used to be responsible for e-house bills and single window and a number of other things. So maybe I'm moving up in the world, but those things seem to be have come together well. So we'll be happy to talk about e-commerce. So listen, I'll get right down to it. We're short on time and we want to leave some space for conversation. So maybe if we go right away to slide 3, and I'll just talk about the e-commerce landscape. You know, I think this isn't news to anyone. You know, I recognize I'm speaking directly to the importing community, so you folks are dealing with this all the time. I think the statistic around that really sticks out for us is when we go back, you know, just a few years, within the less than 10 years ago, and looked at the top importers. We had big 3 automakers, we had big and mortar retailers. You know, some of which are no longer in business. Now we're looking at a lot of direct-to-consumer entities, and you know, really evidencing the changing landscape. You know, and then which COVID is now compounding. So recycling day in my neighborhood last week, and just seeing the Amazon boxes piled up across the street. You're probably living the same thing, both personally and professionally. We have stats here, they're probably out of date. You know, the volumes are just through the roof and continuing. So we've done some work internally within CVSA, just looking at what's happening. Obviously, traveler volumes are way down because of the restrictions and concerns about the pandemic, but the volumes in terms of high value shipments, CLVS and postal continue to be very high. And of course, e-commerce really is a driver. E-commerce goods come through any and all channels. It's like water, it wants to flow. So, you know, it's really challenging a lot of our existing systems and processes, both from, you know, IT infrastructure, as well as from a policy program, legislative regulatory perspective. We note, you know, recent CITT decisions. That's, you know, starting to get into the mix and be influenced by the way goods are coming into Canada via e-commerce. I think the other thing that I'd speak about is also from a threat perspective. Certainly in these forums, we tend to focus on facilitation, but from a CVSA perspective, being that first line of defense, very much concerned with the possibility of you know, the bad stuff, the guns and drugs, firearms in particular, for firearms and opioids, so fentanyl and its derivatives, these are top priorities for our government, and recognizing we do work in that intelligence and threat identification space, and so small parcels, regardless of how they come across, represent, a significant threat vector, which means in English that's, where they can come across. So we see the opportunity then, looking at things like advanced data and modernization, to be able to identify the high risk and set them aside, using analytics and advanced imaging, and making sure we're stopping those, but then at the same time, allowing low risk shipments to move swiftly through in a predictable way. So that's, kind of what we're seeing. I guess we can go next to the next slide and look at the strategy overall. So in trying to get our arms around everything that's happening, we've come up with some pillars. It's a high-level overview in terms of how we are organizing our thinking around where we need to go. And from here, we'll put together, detailed plans that, would start to get at the type of concrete actions that would resonate with folks. But again, as I noted, it's the data piece. You heard Melissa talk about the career analytics portal, which is an initial step towards getting the CLVS shipments getting that data in electronically, risk assessed, all that good stuff that we do in the other modes. So maybe we'll go to the subsequent slide just to speak to each of the pillars. There is absolutely a legal and regulatory aspect that we're exploring in terms of identifying entities, in terms of identifying a data set, and that's work that's underway by its very nature, in terms of whenever we're proposing these sorts of things to the legal and regulatory frameworks, we have to do our work behind the scenes, and then at an appropriate time bring it forward for consultation. So that will happen. When we talk about enabling our operations, really it's giving our officers and operational folks the tools that they need to move these goods through quickly. And that's where that drug and firearm detection piece comes in. I think strategic partnerships is fairly evident. We're speaking in forums like these through BCCC, elsewhere, including the international piece, working with the WCO. There's a framework of standards that's come together due to a lot of very good collaborative work. And then also capacity building in the sense of leaning forward and looking at technology and innovative solutions. So we have today a situation where I can go online off my phone with my Face ID or thumb touch and order just about anything from anything in the world, anywhere in the world. And then it's a fully digital process until it hits the border and maybe needs to be flipped into a paper transaction. But we got to get away from that. We want to get that data as early as we can so that then we can apply advanced algorithms and analytics, again, to be able to identify those threats, but also, as I say, it's pushing through the known and low risk pieces so that things at the border continue to flow. So I guess go to the next one. I won't go too much longer in terms of the presentation because I do want to allow for some questions before time. Obviously, so I mentioned the WCO framework of standards, and really, I think the key piece there, if I have to pick one, is to say that the processing of e-commerce shipments, low-value shipments, is something that all customs administrations around the world are grappling with. That flow of low-value small packets out of China and other marketplaces doesn't just come to Canada, it goes everywhere. So we're working collectively on solutions so that we can try and have a harmonized approach to the extent possible. And then speaking of harmonization, obviously, CARM is a huge piece. You heard about it yesterday. That's top of mind. So we need to ensure that from the revenue perspective and compliance perspective, that all is tying in on the back end. And I think in terms of, I'll just stop on next steps. So, a framework is only as good as the plans that support it. So we are working on identifying, where we want to go in terms of advanced data, where we want to go in terms of our risking capability and what that looks like for processing at the border. And then, of course, the associated compliance structure and that sort of thing. So I think things have coalesced. COVID's had an impact, but we're looking to come out ready and moving ahead in a collaborative way in forums such as these. So I see we have some time left. So Janice, I'll stop there. If I went too fast and you want me to pick up on anything else or elaborate, I'm happy to. Otherwise, we can take the questions.
Okay, thanks, Mike. I believe my colleague Shelley, who's handling the online questions, has one for you.
Hi, Mike. We have a question from Christy. How will the CBSA be strategically aligning themselves to the 8 principles of the cross-border e-commerce as outlined in the Luxor resolution? And is there a plan to establish a working group within the agency, CRA, et cetera, to better understand the current and future market situations?
We are looking, of course, at all the drivers. I mean, being from a customs administration perspective, we're most closely linked to the WCO work, but there is an alignment, obviously, with CRA. In particular, recent announcements around trade and digital services, that sort of thing. We're working our way through that. So I think the answer I can leave you with is the connections with CRA and the Department of Finance as well are there. And so as that evolves, we'll be able to we'll be working collaboratively.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
Thanks, Shelley.
I think we all realize the scope of this project is monumental, and I know we at the CSCB are looking forward to continuing to work with you on the strategy, and hope that we'll be able to make some progress together shortly. So I think unfortunately it is time that we need to move on, but we appreciate the briefing that you gave us on this topic, and I'm sure you'll be hearing from us again shortly. So thank you, Mike.